This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions. Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bishop, and today we've got a very special episode. Now, this isn't a normal Invasion episode. This is a group effort with a lot of podcasts that have been contributing to All the Horror this month. Hashtag All the Horror on Twitter and at All the Horror 18 on Twitter if you want to follow all the great podcasts that are featured in this episode, as well as contributing to 31 days of amazing horror-orientated podcasts that are coming your way throughout the month of October. Now, in this particular episode, we have a lot of special guests, and they're going to be talking about some of their favorite horror movie memories. So sit back, grab a bucket of popcorn, and listen to some stories about these podcasters' favorite horror movie memories.
Hello, I'm Mike.
I'm Morgan.
And we're from the Bad Reception podcast. We're here to talk a little bit about ghost/haunting movies. It's very spooky.
Tone it down.
Sorry. Morgan, am I going first or are you going first?
I can go first.
All right, go ahead.
I'm going to kick it off with a little movie I don't know if we're talking theatrical release. Does that matter? Doesn't matter. Does it matter?
I don't know. Just go with whatever you got.
I'm going to kick it off with a little British made-for-TV movie called Ghost Watch from 1992. It was originally broadcast on BBC One on Halloween night.
Oh,
the style of the show is kind of like a la War of the Worlds, and the fact
it's presented as like a real thing,
like an actual news program or special news program, and we're like cutting in between like being in the studio talking about the hauntings in the area and specifically this one house that's known for being haunted, kind of like an Enfield poltergeist kind of situation, and we're cutting from there to the actual location. Mm-hmm. So we're going into the house where this mother and her two daughters are experiencing these strange events. And then we cut from the strange events into the studio where they have like experts, and the actual news anchors from BBC One are actually presenting this. So it kind of gives you that feeling of like, well, I know it's fake, but maybe not. So much so that when things actually happen in the house, and again, it's like shot on video, and it kind of just gives you that little eerie, unsettling,
like ultra realistic.
Yeah, where you're like, maybe this could be real. Anyway, so Ghost Watch.
I'm gonna start off with 1961's The Innocents. It's an older black and white horror movie. It's about a woman who becomes like a caretaker for some children at this huge sprawling manor, and it's very classy and it's well directed. And
we are looking for a little class on this.
I just want to class it up. The direction is super awesome. The score is great. Deborah Kerr as the lead is really good. It's ultra spooky. It's very just like an atmospheric horror movie. Like not a lot actually happens. There's definitely nothing like jumping out at you. It's just like all these like haunting, bizarre goings on that we're trying to figure out what's happening. And it's a spooky good time, and I recommend it. Thumbs up.
Yay. My next one is a film from 2014 that a lot of people hated, but I enjoy so much so that I've seen it, I don't know, like 10 times by this point. As Above, So Below. It is a found footage film, which typically is terrible, but the way that they handle it, I think it makes a lot of sense for the narrative. Like normally when you see found footage, it seems like, well, why are you carrying around this camera through this? And you kind of second guess their motives, characters' motives.
A lazy plot device.
Exactly. But it works. So I think it's incredibly effective. Most of it takes place in the catacombs underneath Paris, and you feel really claustrophobic, and it's dark, and you kind of you can see somebody second guessing what they're seeing. And I just think it's really, really spooky.
For my second pick, I'm going to go with something a little bit more fun. From 1996, it's Peter Jackson's The Frighteners, starring Michael J. Fox, and this is just a really, really fun movie. It has some scary parts. There's like a death character that's chasing after people and killing them, which is pretty spooky. And they like push through the walls like Freddy Krueger style, where it makes their imprint on the wall. And it's really fun. Mostly this is just like a really entertaining and funny comedy that happens to involve a ghost hunter. It's a really fun movie, and I highly recommend you checking it out if you haven't yet. Good stuff. Is that it? You got any honorable mentions?
I'll do one honorable mention. People are going to roll their eyes at this, and that's totally fine. In 2004, Zach Bagans and crew set out to make a documentary called Ghost Adventures, which would subsequently land them 2 mini seasons on Travel Channel. But their original documentary, because it's so low budget, I mean, say what you will, it's probably all faux ghostly occurrences, but I think because it's so low budget and because they're so earnest with everything, it's pretty spooky. So if you haven't seen their original documentary, I would check it out.
One last one from me. I'm going to say House from 1986, directed by Steve Miner, director of Friday the 13th Part 2 and Friday the 13th Part 3. It's a really, really wacky. This is another goofy one about a writer who's like basically in a haunted house that has all kinds of stuff coming alive and weird, goofy practical effects. It's a little out there, but I like it a lot. It's not scary at all, but it is a lot of fun, especially around Halloween time. So check it out. I think that's going to do it for us.
Okay.
Thanks for having us on.
Happy hauntings.
Happy hauntings, everybody. Ooh, ghost noises.
Okay, I love you. Goodbye.
Hello, I'm Rob.
And I'm Sean.
And this is Movie Geek and Proud. We're here to give our favorite haunting ghost story movies. Sean, you tell us yours first. I'm very curious about this because you know which one mine is.
We might have the same one.
Okay.
Mine would be 2010's Insidious, directed by James Wan, starring Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, Barbara Hershey, and Lynn Shay. And I just love this movie because it has such brilliant cinematography, and it still creeps me out every time I watch it. I like all the sequels. Even though they're not as good as the original, they're still very strong sequels. And to me, this movie is almost like a remake even of Poltergeist, because it's almost the same story, and I love Poltergeist. I just love that Insidious had its own take on a ghost story. It had original ideas, and it's just such a great movie.
I 100% agree with you. Insidious was my pick as well. I love the fact that it's PG-13 and it still scared the crap out of me more than any other ghost story that I've ever seen. Yeah, I love the twists and turns in it, and I love the old school jump scares.
Yes.
They weren't cheesy or too gimmicky, and I just thought they were very creative jump scares. There was high tension, and the acting was brilliant. So, yeah, I 100% agree with you. But for the sake of having two individuals in this recording, I'm going to give you my second best.
Okay.
And my second best is The Others from 2001, starring Nicole Kidman, along with Finola Flanagan, as well as children Alakina Mann and James Bentley. This was written and directed by Alejandro Amendabar. And Nicole Kidman should have gotten an Oscar for this. She was practically a one-woman show. Her face and her, her tension, her fear, her terror, her love for her kids, all of it showed in her face. And that translated into how the audience felt about this house and how creepy it was, and everything that she was experiencing, we were, because we were right there with her, navigating this home alone. And the house technically is a character in itself. It was so huge. The atmosphere and the ambiance and the environment just made the situation very suspenseful. And God, if that twist was not one of the best, because I sure didn't figure that one out. So I give this movie tons of credit for its creativity, its writing, and definitely its acting.
Good pick.
Yeah, I love this movie. Now, yes, we're talking about ghost stories and spirits and stuff like that. Honorable mention, Candyman. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So thanks everyone, and for Work Life and Balance for having us on the show. Look for us on Twitter at MGNP Podcast, and we are Movie Geek and Proud on your favorite podcasts.
This is Stork and Peacock from the Beside a Geek.
Hello.
Wow, you waited to say hello that time.
I did.
Good job.
I'm learning.
And we are here to discuss our favorite ghost or haunted house movie. Right?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Haunting type movie
Haunting thing?
So why don't you kick it off there, Peacock?
Okay, my favorite, and I had a hard time with this because I don't try to avoid these types of movies because they scare the crap out of me. Am I allowed to say swears?
Yeah, you can say swears.
Okay. So they scare the shit out of me. But my favorite is The Others with Nicole Kidman. And when I saw this movie, I actually didn't know that it was going to be a ghosty movie.
Ghosty?
Yeah.
Is that a term?
I don't know, but I didn't know it was going to be scary. I thought it would be like suspenseful. Because you know how, like,
I thought the previews made it pretty clear that it was a ghost story.
I don't think it made it. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think
maybe
it did.
I was just out of the loop. But I thought it was just, I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be that scary. It's freaking scary.
I've never seen it.
It's like, and it's actually a good movie too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's creepy, like kids and stuff. And there's like a twist in the end. Yeah, I know. Ew.
Yeah.
It's good. It's really, really good. So that's my favorite ghost movie.
Cool. The Others.
Yeah.
Mine would be Ghostbusters because I just can't come up with an actual ghost or haunting.
You do love Ghostbusters.
I love it. It's one of the first movies I saw in a theater. It did scare me. I was probably, it's like 6 years old when I saw it. And, terrifying.
I was afraid when I was little that, like,
the librarian, the dog thing.
The dog thing got me.
Yeah, the Zool and Gozer dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you had the toys and stuff, too?
Well, yeah. As I grew older, I just loved it more and more. And it's still one of my favorite movies to this day. Mm-hmm. But it's probably not what they're looking for as far as but it's scary. It's got scary parts.
I mean, you don't usually give people what they're looking for.
Thanks.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but you don't.
No, save that for off air. Yeah, so I guess that's what we got. The Others and Ghostbusters. So
I think those two are two good picks. I think that's respectable.
Okay, well, we'll see what...
Ghostbusters is a ghost story.
Sure. I mean... That's right in the title, right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know how believable it is that there's a giant marshmallow guy, but...
They explain it.
I don't know. I can, for the life of me, never remember how that ends up that there's a giant marshmallow guy in Ghostbusters. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I guess we'll have to watch it.
No, it's okay.
All right, back to you guys. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Trisha.
This is Shauna.
And we're from Two Girls on a Bench. And we are here to talk about our favorite ghost or haunting movies. So what's yours?
So I couldn't really think of like one that scared me necessarily, but I think I really like that movie, The Others. I love a movie with a twist where you're like... They're the ghosts. Yeah. Like that. And I love the thing that's scary about that movie too is when they're looking at pictures.
And they're just pictures of people in coffins.
Yeah, no, they're just dead people, but they're like posed.
Yeah.
And they're like, first of all, they're just creepy old pictures.
Yeah, those were weird.
But it's like two little kids sitting in a chair and then they're like,
They're dead.
And it's like they used to like photograph people when they were dead.
Yeah.
But like pose normally, dress normally, not in like a coffin.
You're right.
Just like
they weren't
sat up like normal, which is creepy. But that movie is I think, a really good ghost story.
It's such a good story and such a good twist. It's like The Sixth Sense. That's the other one I would say is like my favorite ghost haunting story. Like, it's obviously we all know what the twist is now, but when you first watched it, that feeling when you first watched it.
That's how I felt about the others too. I was like, I didn't know that.
Totally didn't know. I never guessed it. I'm always trying to second guess what's going to happen and who's doing what and what's the real story is. So I'm like hard to fool.
Actually,
I feel like
sometimes I'm not though. Sometimes I'm just like along for the ride. Like I don't even like. I'll try to figure it out and then like I'll just give up and be like, this is an interesting story.
Yeah. No, I mean, The Sixth Sense, even without Bruce Willis's character being a ghost the whole time, is a good story about what that little boy is going through, like just on its own. And then when you watch it, like again, after you catch all the little things. So it's even more fun to watch like the second time, third time.
You know, this morning I went into the kitchen and 2 cabinets were open and the drawer of like cutlery was out, and it was because my son doesn't put any of them away.
And it was because of a ghost.
And it was because nobody knows how to close anything or put anything away. And that is the scary, scary ghost in my house. It's my 13-year-old kid.
I know we're supposed to be talking about movies, but like, speaking of drawers, my son always has to close doors and drawers if they're open.
You should go teach my son how to do it then, because he apparently doesn't know how to do it. No, I thought of The Sixth Sense though when I walked in, because it was like all the stuff was open and I would think it was a ghost, except I know it's not. But anyway.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I get the feeling, my mom's spirit is around my son and my daughter, but more so my son. And sometimes when he closes stuff and I don't remember like opening it or why it's open, I kind of think like maybe he knows something I don't know. And he's like,
Probably.
I better take care of that. Like, I don't know. I might be giving him more credit than to do.
He is very magical.
The other ghost movie that scared the crap out of me as a kid was Poltergeist. And
Poltergeist probably is responsible for everyone in our generation's fear of clowns for sure.
Oh, clowns and China dolls and trees randomly. We were out front the other night. My son looked up at the tree in our front yard and it was dark, and he was like, "That's a scary tree, Mom." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you haven't even seen Poltergeist." Of course, he's 3, so that would be really bad.
That'd be fucked up if you showed him
I know, right? Well, my sister and I were like, we had to be like 9 and
yeah, that
6?
was when that came out. Like, and everybody watched it because there was like a kid. There's like kids
There's a little kid in it.
And you're like, oh, it's...
No, my mom was like,
Back
I'm not
in
watching
the 80s,
that. when we watched all kinds of shit.
When there weren't really movies specifically for kids. So it was just like, there's a kid in this movie. You can watch it. There's a clown that attacks someone. And like she talks to like nobody in the TV. And they're on an Indian burial ground. But sure, don't go to Lake Caroline. Like...
We went down to the basement to watch it. My mom was like, you girls have to watch it by yourself. We insisted we wanted to watch it. We sat down. The first second that hand came out of the TV at Carol Ann, my sister and I ran upstairs, and we didn't go in the basement for like 2 months. We wouldn't go down there. We were freaked out. I never actually saw the movie till I was older, but it scared the crap out of me from the first like half hour.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I never watched it. My sister to this day won't watch any scary movies. She hates scary movies.
That's so funny that can like scar you for life a little bit. Although
she was really young. She's 4 years younger than me. So if I was 9, she was 5, which is that's young. Like maybe I was a little older, maybe 6 and 10, but still.
Yeah. Too much.
I think we've reached our time. Thanks for having us.
Those are our scary stories.
Boo.
Ghosts in movies. Bye.
This is the Work-Life Imbalance Podcast, and I'm your lovable office companion, Derek Lewis. And today I'll be discussing my favorite ghost or haunting movies as a part of the All the Horror event. The first movie I want to talk about is Paranormal Activity. Spoiler alert, I know this one is technically about demons, but it's such an amazing movie for so many reasons I could not talk about it. It is a found-footage horror movie from 2007. Essentially, a couple moves into a new home, and before long, some pretty creepy shit starts happening, and the boyfriend or husband, I'm really not sure which, decides to start recording everything, and the results are pretty spooky overall.
there are a lot of really creepy scenes in this movie. Obviously, the burning Ouija board and things like that, not super creepy, but the things that happen before that are pretty creepy. But the pacing of the movie is just so well done, and for a found footage horror, it actually does a really good job with the camera work. Once the couple starts investigating deeper into the quote-unquote haunting, they do actually find out that it is a demon that's doing all of this, but the manifestation of it is very similar to a haunting, and as you can expect, things get pretty creepy. There are a lot of really difficult shots that just make you sit there and not look away from whatever is happening on screen. And that leads to a lot of really uncomfortable moments that just crank up the tension, and it does a really good job of doing that throughout the movie. Now, there are two scenes in particular that I feel are really exemplary in the film. The first of which that also led to me being very afraid to stick my foot out from under the covers, which I was already afraid of. This is a childhood fear that has manifested my entire life. One of the two, I forget whether it was the husband or the wife, their foot is sticking out from under the covers, and this entity comes in during the night, grabs their foot, and drags their ass into the hallway. I didn't necessarily need any more proof on why to be afraid of my foot sticking out from under the cover, but this certainly drove the point home. I should be afraid and keep myself completely covered in a cocoon of blankets throughout the entirety of my sleep. And the other scene that had a really big impact on me is when they've been hearing footsteps and they're trying to capture it on film, so they sprinkle some powder in the hallway into their bedroom, and then they let the cameras roll. That night, while they're sleeping, you start hearing thump, thump, thump as something is walking, and then close to the foreground, you see some steps appear in the powder, and it is so fucking terrifying. There's no other sounds. Like, you're not distracted whatsoever, and you just see these footsteps appear. Even talking about it now, I'm getting goosebumps because of how much fear that instilled in me. It's an extremely successful scene, and it does such a good job of achieving what it set out to do. There are a lot of other good scenes, but those are the two that really stood out to me. Now, unfortunately, the series Paranormal Activity has kind of gone in some weird directions, and I'm not necessarily thrilled about all the sequels they had. I don't think they really recaptured the same magic that the original Paranormal Activity had, but it was definitely a fantastic movie to begin with. So, the next movie I want to talk about is a movie called Session 9 from 2001. Session 9 is a movie about an asbestos cleaning crew that goes into an insane asylum to clean up all the asbestos that had been there for quite a while. No, I'm not sure if it was the intent to open up a new insane asylum or just clean out the building so that it can be demolished or whatnot. But as you can probably guess, with any movie that's ever been set in an insane asylum, it's already a really creepy atmosphere. But what starts out as a pretty normal crew, just going in and cleaning out asbestos, turns into a clusterfuck pretty quickly. Early on, we get a pretty good introduction to all the characters and how they interact with one another. You have Gordon, who is the head of the abatement crew, and he's brought along his right-hand man, Phil, and a couple of other regulars. So part of the plot is that they don't have a whole lot of time to clean this out. They've overbid their ability to do this job, so in order to try to get the bonus and shore up some other plot points about people owing too much money and things like that, they tried to do it as fast as possible. That's not necessarily important to the creepiness, but it is part of the movie. So things start kind of breaking bad about the time that Mike goes down into a basement and finds this treasure trove of tapes that are recorded interviews from one of the patients named Mary Hobbs. Mary Hobbs was a patient who was inflicted with multiple personalities, and basically you get to hear all those interviews of all of the tapes that detail the abuse that she underwent, and you get to hear from each of the voices kind of independently. So after Mike finds the tapes, it goes into a little bit of more interpersonal detail that doesn't necessarily matter all that much, but things start really popping off around then. Fast forward a little bit to nearly the end of the movie, and you've gotten a few pretty good kills, a lot of suspenseful, atmospheric shots, just an overall very uncomfortable movie. And come to find out that Gordon, who everybody thought was well put together and was really on top of all of his shit, apparently had snapped, and he had a new baby and was not handling it well, and apparently he had killed his wife and baby. So his mind was just fracturing as the movie goes on, and one by one he has been killing the crew that he brought in to clean this asbestos. But overall, the movie was just a really interesting look at how people can just snap and how normal everyday stresses pile up, and then someone's mind can just fracture from that. It is certainly heavily implied that Mary Hobbs, the patient with the multiple personalities, when she had died, her spirit had inhabited the hospital, and that's what really got into Gordon and caused him to do all these things. Whether or not that's the case, or whether he was just teetering on the knife's edge anyway, not really sure. It asks a lot more questions than it answers, but overall, just a really great atmospheric movie, and one that a lot of people probably haven't seen. Now, the last movie that I want to talk quickly about is 2011's Absentia. This was directed by Mike Flanagan. For those of you who haven't really heard of Mike Flanagan, he has done this movie, Absentia, Oculus, Hush, Gerald's Game, Ouija, Origin of Evil. He is definitely pumping out a lot of really good work in the last few years. And Absentia was one of his, maybe have even been his first movie. So in the movie, a wife is struggling with the disappearance of her husband, and the whole premise of the movie is that it's been 7 years, and in whatever state they live in or whatnot, somebody has to be missing for 7 years to be declared dead in absentia. So her sister comes to live with her to kind of deal with some of the psychological effects of her, moving on and officially declaring her husband dead and whatever psychological effects that'll have on a person. So the sister comes to live with her, and shortly thereafter wanders down to a tunnel near the house that is kind of creepy, and nobody really goes, except for drifters and vagabonds and things like that. And after Callie kind of goes in the tunnel and comes back to the house, all of a sudden, the wife's husband just magically appears, and he looks fucking terrible. Like he is gaunt. He doesn't remember much. Really doesn't seem to be entirely himself. And then the movie kind of gets into, where has he been? Has he actually been gone? Like when he comes back, I think he's kind of in his PJs. So it's not really like he's been off living a life for 7 years. He just went missing, and now he has reappeared. So it's a little convoluted as far as what's actually happening with the tunnel and things like that. But there's some freaky shit happening with the tunnel, and sometimes the things inside just come out and take somebody and keep them there for an indeterminate amount of time. So while the movie doesn't necessarily have, the best acting that I've ever seen, it definitely has a lot of really fun concepts that there hasn't been a whole lot of other movies that have done the same thing. Also, it's got fucking Doug Jones. I mean, literally the best creature actor that has ever lived. In any movie with Doug Jones, I am 100% on board with. So if you haven't seen Absentia, check it out. It's definitely worth a watch. Maybe not the best movie to add to your collection of favorites, but it's definitely an interesting watch. And that's about all the time I've got, so I will punch the clock. This has been the Work-Life Imbalance Podcast. I'm Derek Lewis, and with that, I think we're going to have to transfer you.
Do you remember telling ghost stories around the campfire? Do you like ghost movies? Do you believe in ghosts? Well, you're in the right place. For this episode of All the Horror, we are talking about our favorite ghost movies. I'm Sam Stepanenko, co-host of Invasion of the Remake. If you're not familiar with us, we talk about remakes that already exist and alternate those discussions with our own fantasy remakes of movies that had some potential but missed the mark. And once in a while, we'll even take on a classic that should never actually be remade, just to see if we can come up with something new. Oh, and we're all big fans of horror movies, so let's get back to the ghosty stuff. I've seen a lot of great ghost movies, and I did have trouble picking just one favorite. There are a few that have really stuck with me, though, for different reasons. We've even talked about a couple on our show, including Ghost Story, which I didn't like nearly as much as my memory told me I did, and Poltergeist, which will always be a favorite no matter how dated it gets. There are also recent movies like the Conjuring movies and their spin-offs, Insidious, and of course the Paranormal Activity movies. Really, it was tough to pick just one. So I am going to recommend my close second before I get to the movie I decided is my current favorite. Check out I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Seriously, watch it if you haven't seen it. It's a slow-paced film with an ending you might not be expecting.
I am 28 years old. I will never be 29. The pretty thing you are looking at is me. But it is me that still cannot see any of what is coming.
It's also directed by horror legacy Oz Perkins, son of Anthony Perkins, who you might know from Psycho. Ultimately, I decided that my current favorite has to be The Last Shift from 2014, written and directed by Anthony DiBlasi and starring Juliana Harkavy, who you might know from The Walking Dead. It's a great ghost story that takes place in a police station that is being shut down. Sound familiar? It was partially inspired by Assault on Precinct 13, but the setting is really the only thing taken from that movie. The film was actually also shot in a real abandoned police station, just to give a little added creep factor. This movie centers on Jessica, a rookie police officer whose very first assignment is to cover the last shift at the station before it is shut down. Her sole duty is to ensure that the remaining evidence on the site remains secure until it can be collected. While she's alone, she is haunted by phone calls from her father, a police officer who was killed in the line of duty, and the ghosts of a cult that committed a mass suicide in the station exactly 1 year prior.
Do we really have to do this now? I'm literally about to start my first shifts. Anybody in here?
You are the lucky rookie to work the very last shift in this mausoleum.
Sanford Police Department.
Help me. I'm trapped. I think they might all be dead. Do you want to get out of here alive?
I am a dancing flame. I'll destroy your own. The ones that lie within your heart. The ones you prayed for.
There's so much blood splashing around in there. She fell to her knees and bowed to the king. That's what Payman means. It was destined. The king of hell. I am safe in the arms of my master, my king.
I'm not ashamed of what I do. I like you. I'm gonna come back for you and all you love. Mark my words.
I think the reason I enjoyed this film so much is because it moves the story from a typical location for ghost stories, and it's a well-constructed film that ties everything together very well. The pacing is good, the acting is solid, and I found it to be one of those horror movies that actually left me a little shaken at the end. No spoilers here, go watch it, and let us know what you thought. Ghost stories go back as far as we can document and extend into every culture, and while we may not tell them around the campfire so much anymore, we can still get chills by going to the theater or watching in the comfort of our own homes. On that note, I am out of here.
Special thanks to all the amazing podcasts that contributed to today's special episode. Be sure to follow all of them on your favorite podcast apps, subscribe to them, and check them out on their social media on Twitter. And don't forget to follow us. We are at Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion the Remake on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion the Remake at gmail.com. Don't forget to follow all the horror that's happening in October. That's hashtag all the horror on Twitter and at all the horror 18 on Twitter as well. So follow at all the horror 18 to keep up with all the podcasts that are happening for the month of October. 31 podcasts, one for each day of October. Don't you dare miss it. It is a podcast event like nothing that's ever happened before. It is history in the making. And don't forget, we are also doing horror episodes all month long here on Invasion of the Remake. We will be back next week with another episode and a few guest stars along the way as well. And we are also doing 31 Days of Horror. It's our annual 31 Days of Horror challenge, and we are watching 31 horror movies we've never seen before, one for each day of the month. Not limited to, so we can go over that. And that is potentially between all three of us, Sam, Trish, and myself, 93 movies we're going to be talking about. And that episode, that's actually going to be a couple episodes, and they'll be dropping in November. So please check that out. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. I've been Jason, and for Sam and Trish, and all of the amazing podcasts that were on this episode, we are out of here.